Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In. Now, I fully recognize that this is initially airing in a fall month where the weather's nice, but there are rainy days now and winter is coming, and I get so many questions about how to meet our children's sensory needs indoors and how to provide purposeful and intentional activities that work the whole person, meaning the body and the brain together, whether that's for small little tidbits of breaks during the day or whether that's just because you want some intentional activities. So I'm really excited to be joined by fellow occupational therapist and longtime teletherapy practitioner who goes by Miss Renee online. In this episode, we share creative indoor activity ideas to support body awareness and sensory development. No fancy equipment required. Renee and I also chat about the evolving role of teletherapy and why it's not just a backup plan. It can actually be a powerful, flexible tool for homeschoolers. So whether you're looking for new ways to support your child at home or just want to better understand how virtual OT services can meet homeschooling needs, this episode is packed with practical takeaways. So let's dive in. Hey, how's the weather where you are? It's cool over here now that fall's coming in. Guys, this is a question that we get asked every day, but for kids, it can be so much more. Weather can spark conversations that build social skills, help kids notice their body's responses through interoception, and even deepen their sensory awareness as they explore sound, light, and movement in nature. That's what makes the National Weather Museum's Weather Kids Experience so special. This interactive platform invites kids to feel, see, and explore weather in a way that's accurate, creative, and fun. It's hands-on learning that opens the door to real connections. And weather doesn't stop at science. It ties into math through patterns and data, into literature and storytelling, art and photography, and even engineering as kids think about how humans interact with each of these elements. The Weather Kids Experience weaves all of this together in one immersive, engaging space. So the next time that you ask, "How's the weather?" remember, it's also a question that can spark wonder, learning, and connection. So visit wxkids.org to look around or purchase their annual membership and use the code HOMESCHOOLOT in all caps for 10% off and experience where weather becomes wonder. Now, on with the show. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In. My name is Sarah Collins, and today I have with me Renee Mathews. And I actually found Renee because I was just looking on Instagram, looking on YouTube to find some OTs that have some really great ideas for things that are fun indoors or outdoors, right? Because there are so many times in the spring where people are like, "Get me outside," and so many times in the summer and the winter that people are asking me for ideas inside. So super excited to hear from Renee to be able to share with us just some great ideas on activities with our kids. So Renee, first, before we get started, can you tell me about who you are, where you are, and how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate the conversation and being invited to talk. I received my Master's of Science degree in occupational therapy from Seton Hall University. as a new grad, I actually started working in inpatient rehabilitation and then transitioned to brick and mortar public and private school-based settings. And during my time in the public schools, I also actually coached a unified track and field team through the Special Olympics, which was a team composed of athletes with varying abilities to promote social inclusion. As a previous Division I track and field athlete myself, I really, really enjoyed it and I miss it so much. But of course, life took me in other directions. So then in 2019, I transitioned into the school-based teletherapy world. And when COVID hit, I realized there was really a great need for teletherapy resources and support as many students, families, and educators were unexpectedly thrown into the virtual learning environment. So I decided to create digital resources through YouTube, Instagram, and Teachers Pay Teachers to help students, caregivers, and educators during that time. And currently, I am a teletherapy clinical manager, and I work to provide clinical support to therapists and schools.
Amazing. So before we start diving into activities, there are families from all over that listen to this podcast. And a lot of times families are like, hey, we live really far out. I can't get into occupational therapy. Can you just describe like what does teletherapy look like for families that can't go into a therapy situation or that could but choose teletherapy? Like what is that actually like a day in the life, you know? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, some families do choose teletherapy or choose to send their children to virtual schools, and there are virtual schools all across the country. Some some parents or families don't really have or might not have many therapy resources
Mhm.
nearby or related service providers nearby. And because of that, services might be provided virtually, so they might not really have a choice per se if they don't have a provider that can get out to them if they're kind of in a away from the
Remote
city or
location.
in
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
remote location. Yeah. But basically, communication happens with the families directly. Typically, if they are going to a strictly virtual school or like an online academy, virtual services can also be provided to brick and mortar locations as well. So
Okay.
in that case, you'd be communicating with the the employees at the school. So if it's the teacher, we call it like a primary support person that's kind of helping the students log on to sessions. And then if they are in their home environment doing schooling at home virtually, then you'd be communicating with the parents, setting up scheduling, consulting with them, talking with them after sessions, helping to guide them during sessions to provide any kind of support that's needed for the students. And, a lot of people think that teletherapy is just screen based. And I think there's
Hmm.
kind of like a negative connotation sometimes about teletherapy, but it's actually, there are so many options and really the possibilities are endless with teletherapy because like personally, I tell my students, take your laptop, bring it outside. We're going outside. We're doing activities outside. It doesn't have to be just strictly screen based activities where, you can do a lot of like mouse and click
Right.
activities or maybe visual perceptual activities online games and things like that. But a lot of it is also hands on and you are having the students and modeling for them doing exercises during the session or trying to coach their caregiver or primary support person to help them during sessions while they're doing actual handwriting or fine motor exercises or tabletop activities. And then like I said, of course, you always take the computer outside. You can move it around
Right.
the house if you're working on different kinds of, goals, navigating around the environment, gross motor activities. So it's really a lot of fun. And I've really fallen in love with teletherapy and
So
it's pushed
interesting.
me to be more creative and,
Hmm. Hmm.
OTs are adaptable and they modify already, right? But
Yeah.
this is, when you first start out, it kind of seems like a barrier or hindrance, but it really sparks your creative mind to help you think of alternative ways to do things.
I love this. So if parents are looking for teletherapy resources, now because of our licensure, you would still have to be in the same state, right? So how would they find a teletherapist?
Yeah, well, I personally work in the school-based setting for
Yeah.
teletherapy, so those
So you're
students
assigned
are
based
already
on the school.
enrolled,
Yeah.
yeah, in those schools, and either those schools contract out or hire, teletherapists
Hmm.
directly. There are, I'm sure you could do a quick Google search too if you're just looking for like outside teletherapy
Hmm.
services and see, what services are provided. And you do need to be licensed in the state that you're practicing in. that you're residing in, and also
Yeah.
the state that the student is residing in too. So you just have to check, families would have to check and make sure the provider is licensed in both states and is able to service the student or
Yeah.
the child, rather.
Interesting. I think it does open up a lot of doors for those families who are especially homeschooling but are out in a remote location, or there's a lot of families that I've spoken with that they're homeschooling and it is such a disruption to their day to be able to get somewhere with one child when they're perhaps are working with a lot of others at home as well, or even one other. Like it doesn't have to be a lot of others, one other student at home. And so it can be a big disruption. So just knowing that that is an option for homeschool families is something to Google, to check into, whatever, to see, and then ask the right questions about licensure. That was one thing. But what else would you say? Is there anything else to ask for families if they're looking into teletherapy? That would be a really good question to ask the therapist to know if it would be a good fit.
Yeah, and teletherapy isn't a one size fits all for
Hmm.
all children or all families. Children that might need more hands-on support or just support in general would probably benefit more from having an in-person
Hmm.
provider. So that's something to talk about too, is whether the therapist themselves thinks that it would be, a least restrictive environment for the
Hmm.
student and that they can provide the services appropriately to the student, because we don't want to get into a situation where they really do need that
Yeah.
hands-on care, but it can't be provided virtually, or maybe
Hmm.
the caregiver or the primary support person isn't able to be there and be hands-on all the time. Sometimes we have children that maybe don't need as much support, so their caregivers are kind of hanging out in the background and they're like in the house, but they're not really sitting next
Hmm.
to the child and during each session, which
Hmm.
is totally fine if the student doesn't need that support all the time. But some caregivers are sitting next to the child and
Hmm.
providing that support. Yeah, I guess I'd just recommend, asking the provider, first of all, what their teletherapy experience is, if they feel, given after they've had conversations with the family, if they feel that it would be appropriate to service the child via
Hmm.
teletherapy, and also, what kinds of even supplies and things that might be needed. I mean, that goes into a whole other topic, because
Yeah.
I tend to try to use items from the home and make it as easy as possible for
Yeah.
families to find things from the home. And I kind of have the students do a little scavenger hunt and kind of like create their own OT toolkit to
Hmm.
use at home so that it's easily accessible and the parents don't have to buy anything for the students or the children. But yeah, just seeing what their experience is, how comfortable they feel, servicing virtually, if they feel like it's an appropriate method to service the child, and any other barriers that they might foresee in the home, if there's anything else, even with scheduling, or if there is
Yeah.
someone, if there is a someone there to help out and
Hmm.
provide hands-on assistance if needed. But even just for safety reasons too, you
Yeah.
always want to have an adult in the home in case there is an emergency, regardless of how old that child is.
Yeah.
So I always recommend that at least somebody's in the home and accessible.
Yeah. Amazing. This kind of makes me giggle because this is not at all what we were saying that we were going to talk about. But, I know that there are families that are kind of stuck with being able to find services for their children. And a lot of times this could be an option. So I just want to, dig a little bit more into it. I will admit this is not an area of my expertise because I've never done this. I work only with parents at this point, but I love making sure that we have through homeschool OT the best resources out there that I can make a match, with families and providers. So that's amazing. So now let's dig in a little bit more to some activities because the reason that I found you was, I saw some of your YouTube videos, specifically one like you were on a pillow with a shark attack, right? And you're just like using items within the home to really work on body awareness. So, can you tell me kind of your thought process when you are coming up with ideas?
Yeah. So, well, just a little background about myself. I have always enjoyed video editing and creating things. So when I decided to create, my social media platform and things like that, I already kind of had a background in video editing and all that kind of stuff. But typically how my thought process goes is I see where there's a need. And at this point, when I ask some of those online what types of activities that they're kind of looking for. When I
Mhm.
first started out, I was kind of like gauging to see what really was the need, what areas need to be focused on, and
Mhm.
it was a little bit tricky to figure out, exactly what was needed. But now I can reach out and say, like, to my audience and say, hey,
Mhm.
what kinds of videos are you looking for? What types of topics should I focus on and address? So when I do find that need, then I typically come up with a theme. So for like the surfboard video activity or surfboard video on my YouTube, I it was just summertime, and
Yeah.
I was like, what's a good summer themed video that would be engaging for children, that could work on balance and motor coordination and body awareness. And then the ideas just kind of start floating in, instead of just it being a copy, the movements and
Yeah.
exercises. I'm like, how can I upgrade this? Well, let me grab a pillow and have us stand on it so we can also work on balance and see if that works in some other skills as well. And it makes it more fun for the children too. And then from there, I always try to make my movements more pronounced for those like exercise videos
Mhm.
or movement videos, so they're easier to follow along with.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't want it to make it too difficult, but also I always tell families that they can always slow down the videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if a child does need it to be downgraded a little bit, they can always make it slower and then, even stop it and pause it and have the child model whatever pose I'm doing in that
Right.
moment. And then, I mean, you could always speed it up too for the children that want more of a challenge. So I do try to keep all of that in mind when I am making my videos, what's of interest to the children and what needs there are according to the audience, and maybe the types of goals that they're addressing with their children or students. And then the ideas just kind of take off from there, and then I end up having like a whole list of a whole notebook full of activities and
Of things you want
ideas,
to
and I
do.
can't get to them, but I do have a running list and just kind of go through those.
Love that. Hey, it's Sarah, popping in for a quick minute to share a resource that I am genuinely excited about. The FORM, or FORM curriculum from Form Education. If you're looking for a biblically based health and PE curriculum that supports your child's whole development, this is it. FORM gives you everything you need in one place. There's animated videos, devotional and teaching guides, movement videos, and auto-graded assessments, all designed to help your kids grow, not just physically, but in their faith and their self-awareness as well. It can be used within the home or as part of a co-op. Guys, I'm the gym teacher for our co-op this year for 3rd and 4th graders, and I can't wait to get started because I know I'll be providing really great lessons, and it's going to help to give them fitness, nourishment, information on rest, and it's all designed not just for right now, but what will plant seeds for a lifetime. And it supports the developmental principles that we talk about all the time here on the OT is In, like interoception, so understanding what's going on inside the body, motor planning, and grasping the why behind movement, not just the what. It's thoughtful, therapeutic, and it's rooted in truth. Getting started is easy, guys. Get instant access to preview the materials, review what's inside, and then you can purchase with confidence. We only get so much time with our kids, and Form helps make every moment count. So learn more at formeducation.org. Now, back to the episode. Welcome back. So now that we know a little bit about your thought process when you're making up these videos, tell me a little bit about why, right? Like, why do we need to keep our bodies moving, and how does that connect with other activities that our kids need to participate in during the day?
Yeah, well, it's very important to keep moving because it helps with overall physical health, brain function, increases blood flow to the brain, and also helps with mental health too. And it's important to keep our bodies moving to continue to refine skills such as motor coordination, proprioception, which these are skills that are needed for body awareness. And body awareness is the ability to understand where your body is in space, how it moves, and how it interacts with the environment around you.
Mm-hmm.
It involves proprioception, which is a big word to some, but it basically just means the ability to sense your body's position, so your limbs in space, and then kinesthesia, which is the ability to sense body movement. The way I typically like to quickly and informally test this with students is I will hold the student's limb or their arm in a certain position. I'll have them close their eyes first and then move their limb in a certain position and then have them replicate it on the other side of their body. And then for kinesthesia, to test kinesthesia, I would just add in movement. So I would just start moving their arm while their eyes were closed and they'd have to replicate it on the other side of their body. For the students that have difficulties with this, you'll notice that they can't really tell if their arms are out or in. They might put their arm down when their arm is actually up. And that gives me an idea that we might have to work on some body awareness, some proprioception and kinesthetic activities to help them.
So let's do,
and
can
all
we
of these
just
things
dive a
are
little
okay.
deeper into that for a second? Like if that is a struggle for our kids, like where would we see that other than a test? You know, like where would we see that parents see it during the day? How would that manifest itself?
Yeah, so children who have difficulties with body awareness, they can present with clumsiness, challenges with fine motor skills, difficulty navigating the environment. You know, like I said, it's important that children work on these skills so they can improve as their bodies are growing and developing.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes it's not as blatant as some people might think. They might think it's just a handwriting difficulty, but it might actually be something that's even deeper than that. It could be a body awareness issue or a proprioceptive issue that is causing difficulties with handwriting too. So in grad school, this was drilled into our heads all the time, but we talk about proximal stability for distal mobility. So you need to work on those
That makes me
proximal.
laugh. Yeah, we say that all the
Yeah.
time. Even on this podcast, I'm like, you guys, in OT terms,
Yep.
proximal stability leads to distal mobility.
Yep. It's one of those things you'll never
Yep.
forget. But you're working on all that core, all of the stability and foundational skills that are closer to the core of your body. And then that helps provide the foundations for distal movements, which in effect would affect things like handwriting or manipulating buttons and zippers, tying shoes, like all those types of things. So that's why us as OTs, we look like we're working on like tons of things because systems are so complicated and complex. And we have to work on all of these things to help with the function of maybe that one goal that we're working on, which might be the handwriting.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you're making up these videos, so how many do you have right now? And like, where can families find these?
Gosh, I don't know how many videos I have total, but I do have quite a few on YouTube. My YouTube profile, I guess, or channel is Miss Renee OT. On Instagram, I also have some extra things on there. It's Miss Renee _OT. And then I do have some resources on Teachers Pay Teachers. I do have some free resources too. I do encourage people to go check it out and see what free resources are there. But yeah, that's where you can find
So
all my videos.
are most of them short or are they long? Like if a parent is trying to add this into their day, when would be a good time for that? And how long would that take?
Yeah, some videos are shorter than others. Some are a little bit longer. It really depends the type of video that you're looking for. So some of the movement videos are typically maybe 2.5 minutes, 2.5 minutes to 5 minutes, maybe tops. And then some of the other videos that I have are kind of more like teaching videos, which could be a little bit longer, or they're kind of like modeling some of the activities that I've created or thought of to implement during sessions. And it can give parents like ideas of things to do with their child at home. So it really depends. You can kind of, some are just educational purposes and some are actually videos that you can actively use with your child.
I love this. And you mentioned before kind of started having a OT toolkit or, what you can do within your home or what you can use within your home. What are some of the most recommended things that you have for people to put in that?
Paper and pencil would be
Easy.
the perfect one. Scissors. I love Play-Doh.
Yeah.
We can do so many things with Play-Doh, manipulating, the Play-Doh, rolling balls, all sorts of things, pinching. Typically like a string or beads too. You can work on some fine motor things, some kind of small manipulatives. You can just grab some coins so you can work on like in-hand manipulation, dexterity. You can also do a lot of different things with coins that you wouldn't believe. Believe it or not, there were some times that my students didn't have anything really accessible. So I would said, grab a pencil, grab paper, And we literally just took paper and was ripping up paper, manipulating paper, rolling it into balls,
Mhm.
flicking it with our different fingers, doing finger exercises with pencils. So you don't really need a ton of supplies.
Yeah.
It's really putting your creative mind to use. And I do have a lot of videos that show you how to use rubber bands and doing exercises with rubber bands or pencils, and paper or Play-Doh. So I guess those would be like the top things: paper, pencil, Play-Doh, scissors.
Yeah.
That would be my top.
Amazing, amazing. Because the video that you had with the shark attack, people are just, or I guess it's not the attack, but
Surfboard,
they're
yeah.
surfing. Yes, it was a blanket and people, or a pillow, and you were standing on top of that. So I love that parents can really look and see, okay, what is it that I've got, and it just spurs so many ideas of these, long summer months or cold winter months of we still need to get our bodies moving, but what can I do that? I'm out of creativity, right? So you really provide that for families. Thank you, Renee, so much for being here and for sharing your wealth of knowledge, both on teletherapy and some activities and ideas. And we will make sure that we have your YouTube, your Instagram, all of that is linked in the show notes here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning into The OT is In. If today's episode got you thinking about some of the underlying skills in handwriting, whether it's how your child holds a pencil, how they sit at the table, or how they move through their day, I've got a resource just for you. You can now download the Motor and Handwriting Assessment at homeschoolot.com. It's a quick and easy tool to help you figure out where your child is thriving and where they might need a little support. So just head to homeschoolot.com/shop to grab your copy or find a link in the show notes. And as always, thanks for letting me be a part of your homeschool journey. Remember, the OT is always in, and I am so glad that you are here.